The cover page of One Piece, Chapter 1141, Older Women, shows the same scene as the previous one, just from a different angle. We're still stuck on Yamato's cover story. Nami's throwing a fit because they didn't find any valuable treasure in the old castle. For her, treasure trumps all this low-key business. Rad warns her to keep quiet, especially since they're bringing 2 wounded guards with them. Ro tells them to just ignore Nami and focus on resting. But Nami's frustration got the better of her. Meanwhile, Frankie continued his tour of the treasure tree, awestruck by its sheer scale. Ripley explained that they inhabit the massive branches of the colossal Atom Tree, with each village boasting a rich history. They pointed out a branch that once supported Gon Village, whose name originates from an ancient Norse term for tiny hell. Over time, the branch had withered, making it vulnerable to the devastating effects of lightning and fire. Frankie struggled to comprehend the enormity of that decision. The ancient atom trees, it seemed, were not invincible. Ripley noted that Elb's greatest vulnerability lay in its susceptibility to fire and lightning, an ominous revelation given the impending turmoil caused by the Holy Knights. Should Saint Kingham indeed possess the mythical giraffe-rhino model kin, it's likely he'll wield lightning powers as well. Furthermore, it's worth noting that both fire and lightning are elements Luffy has previously controlled. Meanwhile, Usopp's drunken enthusiasm led him to warmly greet Nami at the feast, remarking on Luffy and Zoro's absence. Nami brushed it off, suggesting they were likely exploring, which Usopp found reassuring. As he introduced Elder Jarul to Nami, the old man's compliment on her appearance sparked Usopp's curiosity, prompting him to ask if Nami was the Elder's type. Jarul's laughter belied his deadpan admission. He had a preference for older women. Usopp's slap nearly proved fatal, with the Elder's helmet saving him from certain doom, prompting the drunk sniper to erupt into laughter at the absurdity of Elder Jarul's preference for older women, joking that the Elder might as well be searching for a fossil. Dory intervened, grabbing Usopp and reprimanding him for his reckless behavior. Undeterred, Usopp suggested they attempt to pull out the sword, Excalibur style. But Brogy was skeptical, warning that the blood loss would be fatal. Meanwhile, Brook was entertaining the crowd with a lively tune, his head tucked below his belt, highlighting just how intoxicated Usopp was. Nami understood why he was so excited, since Make Elbaf had been a dream of his for a long time. Jinbei could see his enthusiasm just by looking at him. Meanwhile, Sanji felt something was off and started looking around, but he was more worried about Gerd and didn't think about Luffy or Zoro. Gerd was helping the castle guards, who had been badly hurt with broken bones and stab wounds. The guards were tough guys, and Gerd wanted to know what had happened. Ro was up to something, and Nami asked him what he was doing. Ro claimed he was just researching ways to improve his block castle, but then he noticed the front door had been cut down, and he saw the guards. Gerd saw that Ro was sweating as he explained, and she sternly asked if he was getting nervous on his own. Ro admitted that it was because she was staring at him. When Gerd decided to ask the guards, Ro insisted that she let them rest. Instead, she planned on telling Elder Jarul. Ro argued that would just ruin the party for him. Ro suggested that Gerd should gather all the facts before ruining the party. Gerd's frustration was palpable as she glared at him. Ro realized that he might get in trouble by association if the truth about Loki's release came out. He hoped that Loki would flee instead of causing trouble on Elbaf. However, the mention of someone resembling Shanks was alarming enough to distract Ro, causing him to miss Gerd charging up behind him. She struck the giant with her weapon, demanding that he tell her the truth once and for all. In the realm of the dead, Zoro was met with a gruesome scene. Loki and the giant animals had been brutally beaten. Luffy called out to the unconscious giant, wondering what had happened. Zoro observed that Loki was enormous, even for a giant. Luffy shouted at the giant to respond, at the very least to acknowledge that he was still alive. As Luffy attempted to free him, Zoro cautioned him to wait. Luffy would indeed require assistance, considering the chains were made of sea stone, and the sheer quantity was staggering, enough to equip an entire army. Zoro remained cautious, wondering what could have possibly overwhelmed such a large number of giant animals. Luffy yelled at his first mate, insisting that they aid Loki before he succumbed to his injuries. However, Zoro retorted that they owed the prince nothing, given his notorious reputation and enormous size, as freeing Loki could potentially put even a country like Elbaf at risk. Zoro instructed Luffy to wait while he climbed the giant and then, surprisingly, kicked Loki just above the belt. Luffy was shocked, but the sudden jolt of pain roused Loki, whose deafening roar echoed through the giant forest. Zoro's unorthodox method was intended to verify whether Loki's injuries were genuine or a ruse. The disastrous prince could only muster a furious growl before falling unconscious once more. Luffy assumed Loki had died, and according to Zoro, if he was indeed dead, it would be a relief. Zoro resigned himself to going along with Luffy's plan, but he decided to leave a small piece of sea stone attached to one of Loki's legs. This would give them leverage to have a conversation with Loki once he woke up. Luffy was thrilled and set off to fetch Chopper to treat Loki's injuries. However, Zoro, the navigation expert, determined that the library was too far away. Instead, they would try to find a doctor who was attending the party in the village. Zoro warned Luffy that if the giants discovered they had freed Loki, they would be banished from Elbaf. Luffy was willing to take that risk and volunteered to go fetch a doctor. Zoro added that they should also stock up on meat, as Luffy couldn't fight at his best without food. He pointed out several tons of meat nearby, which happened to be the giant animals that Loki had been fighting. Luffy was shocked and told Zoro not to joke about something like that. He considered the giant animals to be his buddies and would rather go hunting in the mountains later on. Zoro didn't see the difference, but Luffy was insistent. Luffy was furious and told Zoro that his friends were off the menu. Zoro could only apologize. Just as Luffy was about to head off in search of a doctor, he noticed something above. There were voices overhead, and it was a shocking sight. The giant warrior pirates, along with Sanji, were plummeting downwards. Apparently, the island clouds couldn't sustain themselves in the realm of the dead, sending them into a free fall. They were in such a rush that they didn't even take the time to get a proper farewell. The giants could only accept their fate. Hadin apologized to his crew for their miscalculation, which was made to ensure Elbaf's safety. Goldberg didn't blame his captain, while Road cried as they fell. However, Luffy transformed into a massive gum-gum balloon, cushioning their fall. Houdin looked at Luffy with gratitude, and the Yonko smiled back. Just then, the ship was launched back up, and Odo carefully ensured that Gerd fell at a safer angle. The others, though battered, expressed their thanks, acknowledging that without Luffy's help, they would have met their demise in Valhalla. Hadin was relieved they arrived in time and begged Luffy not to release his brother. Gerd forced Roe to reveal the truth, and the snitch apologized. Hadin made it clear that Loki was untrustworthy, citing his brother's history of deception and betrayal since childhood. Luffy had to look away as the giants shared their concerns. Zoro broke the news that they were too late as the chains began to move. Hadin was stunned to see Loki standing up, his massive frame commanding attention. The giants who knew him since childhood cowered in fear. Luffy was caught off guard, expecting Loki to still be unconscious. Loki grasped his weapon, Ragnir, which means Iron Thunder, and his brother shouted at him to stop. Hadin warned Loki to put Ragnir down, but Loki's smile only grew wider. Thus ending the chapter, it seems like One Piece Loki possesses both Thor and Loki in Greek mythology powers, which, if you think about it, is pretty broken, and is Loki the Ragnarok of One Piece, and the Asgard is the world government. Nonetheless, will the next chapter be a massive fight or something unexpected? Thank you for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe.